Catherine of Siena, born 1347-ish in Florence, 24th and 25th children. Before she's 20 years old, she has a vision of Peter, Paul, and John with Jesus. I just read Teresa had a vision where she believed Christ actually appeared to her, walked in front of her. 1363, she joins the Third Order of the Dominicans, which is a lay monastic order. I guess today it would be like joining Opus Dei, something similar to that, where you're not taking monastic vows, but you are joining a religious order. 1366, she undergoes a series of mystical experiences known as the spiritual espousals. So this is when, as an adult, she starts having this series of visions. But of course, as a teenager, she had already experienced it. 1374, having heard about her spiritual espousals, which became pretty famous, she's invited to attend the general chapter of the Dominicans in Florence. And it probably was not typical at the time for a monastic order to have a woman as the keynote speaker at one of their conferences. So that was kind of a big deal. 1375, she receives the stigmata. So that means you wake up one day, or you're doing the laundry, and then suddenly you see blood dripping onto the laundry, and you look and there's holes in your hand, there's blood coming. 1370, she starts nagging Pope Gregory XI to move the papacy back to Rome from Avignon. And he did it. So whether it was Catherine of Siena, who successfully ended the Avignon captivity or not, she did tell him, you don't belong in France, you belong in Rome, and he did eventually go back. She also supported the call for a new crusade, which never happened. The crusades ended in 1291 when Acre fell, and they were never started up again. 1377, 1378, perhaps the reason that we know about her today is she wrote a bestseller called The Dialogues, or a treatise on divine providence. And it described her spiritual experiences. So we actually know about her spiritual experiences in some detail because of this book. And I should have looked it up because I said the same thing last week. I think this book is in my list of the 25 most important books in the history of Christianity, but I didn't check my list. 1378, serves as a papal emissary and negotiator to Florence. Again, a very unusual role for a woman in 14th century Europe. Just not something that happened. From 1378 on, she worked in Rome for reformation of the church. She dies in 1380, so she's, what, 33 years old. So you think of what she accomplished in 33 years, it's really quite astonishing. 1970, she's named a Doctor of Theology by the Roman Catholic Church, along with Teresa of Avila, Teresa of Lisieux. So they are the three women doctors of the church, and there's a total of 33, so there's 30 men who are doctors of the church. So, why is she in here? A prophet and visionary, mystic, advisor to two popes, a church reformer. Actually, some of the reforms she called for were things that later Luther called for. A noted theologian, papal negotiator, and author of a pretty famous book in the history of Christianity, and also the namesake of the Catholic Church in Kennesaw. So I should have put that down also. If you attended our course 8 months ago, 10 months ago on women as leaders in the church, Deborah went through what all of these symbols mean. But if you want to have a lot of symbols associated with you in the Catholic Church, you want to be a mystic, because all three of the women who are doctors of the church have a plethora of symbols associated with them.
That's the truth, and who raised her.
Yeah. John Paul II commented on her in 1997. I think, if I remember correctly, he was speaking in Siena when he gave this speech. He said, "The memory of Siena cannot fail to call to mind the figure of the great saint, now also a doctor of the church. who was born in your land. The message of St. Catherine is still valid and inspiring. With the many problems she had to face in her time are not unlike those of today. With the strength and the freedom that came from her intimate union with God in a tumultuous era, she was able to call on both great and small to build relationships of justice and peace in all walks of life. How can we not hope that Catherine's teaching, that of a woman exemplary and combining contemplation with action, I like that phrase, may continue to influence the culture and life of the Italian nation of which she is the patroness, and of the city and province of Siena in particular. May the 650th anniversary of her birth, which occurs at this time, once again turn the attention of the Sienese and of all Italians to the rich patrimony of her teaching. And I don't think I could have said it any better why she belongs in the top 25 than Pope John Paul II said, so I will leave you with that. Okay, so we get to the question I've been asking every time. How many people would have, if you were doing your own list of the top 25 most important people in the Post-Apostolic Church, would you have included Catherine of Siena on your list? Raise your hand if you would have.
Sure, why not?
Thank you.
I'm cool with that.
Most of you. A few of you didn't.